Hello, BookTube. As you know, if you've been watching this channel, BookTube has been threatened lately with the rumors of haul wars. Various booktubers going out and spending money they can't spare on books they don't need. The last thing we need is a full-fledged eruption of wholesale haul wars, but I did my best to cool tempers and thought that one of the expedients by which I could do that today would be to haul some books. So I went out. I had errands to do. It's not world-endingly, bitingly, horrifically cold. It is still cold, but I have done fewer errands and gone out less because for the last 2 months the temperature has been not just cold but dangerous. So I haven't really felt motivated. That's not true today. Temperatures are going to go up and up for the rest of the week. So I went out and did errands and then treated myself to a trip to the Brattle bookshop, which for those of you who are new is a used bookstore in downtown Boston that I just love. I've been going there for a very, very, very long time. I love to visit anyway. They could swap out all their stock with old math textbooks so that I'm not buying anything. I would still go there every week. It's nice when it feels like home. So I went and I got a pile of books. Now, the pile of books that I'm going to show you is not as big as some recent piles have been, but that's not from want of trying. I got a lot of stuff that I'm not showing you that is going out to people, presents for people, because as one of you, as a certain person pointed out, how nice it is that I suddenly have this huge list of people in my mind when I'm shopping for books. So-and-so is interested in such and such. So-and-so is looking for this particular book. Even so-and-so is looking for this particular edition. I mean, particular editions would usually be a pretty tall order for a used bookstore, but my bookstore gets everything all the time. The Brattle's stock is overturning all the time. So it's possible. More possible with me probably than with you at your used bookstores. So I got a ton of books. We'll start off with the mass market paperbacks. So this first one, I saw just today that Michael K. Vaughan did a video about some of the Westerns that he's going to read this year outside of his epic Western event, June on the Range. We still have months to go for June on the Range, but he's got lots of Westerns, and they do call to you. Once you get a taste for them, you do miss them. I tend to leave all my Western reading for June on the Range. And I think I will still do that. I found a book today a Western, it's just a cheesy mass market paperback Western, from an author I don't think I've ever read before for June on the Range. I think I'll just leave this for then. This is The Treasure of the Brasada by Les Savage Jr., where that guy is being trampled by a horse. And I don't think I've ever read this author. I think this, if he's like other Western authors, he probably wrote 1 million books. I'll have to check and see if I have ebooks of any of them. But this thing attracted my attention, not so much for the garish cover, although the cover is not a normal Western cover, as for the fact that it has what the Brattle has instructed me is called a map back. It has an illustration of the location of the story on the back, with enumerated locations so that you know exactly where everything is in relation to everything else. Mapbacks became extremely popular with precise murder mysteries. So something like a Nio Marsh, where you need to know exactly where the apartments are in connection to the elevator. And you've got to know exactly where the trash disposal chute is. So they would come with a map of all of that, so you could keep it clear in your head. And I've seen a whole bunch of mapback mysteries at the Brattle. This is the first mapback Western that I've ever seen. I think Nicole at the Brattle said probably it's because it is in some sense a hunt for treasure. So there is a kind of necessity to know locations here. I don't know that the book will actually tell me anything about itself. Oh, well, yeah, what the story is about. Well, that's good enough for me. Being caught, bloody gun in hand, leaning over the body of the man he had threatened to kill, forces Bronco buster Glenn Crawford to turn up at the Big O Ranch, a weary, footsore fugitive with more than one score to settle. Even the murder of the ranch owner in San Antonio had not prepared Crawford for the state of the affairs he finds at the ranch. His sudden presence there seems to scare some of the crew half to death and lead others to try to kill him every chance they get. The Treasure of the Brasada. I will probably leave this for June on the Range, but I was in a Western getting mood because of Mike's video. Then I got an anthology. This is from the 90s. Yes, 1993. Ellen Datlow and Terry Winley did a whole bunch of anthologies. This is Snow White, Blood Red, a mass market anthology of where they got a whole bunch of fantasy writers, fantasy writing fans of theirs, science fiction writers, friends of theirs, to do adaptations of fairy tale and folk tales. Here, you've got Joanna Russ, I think, is in here. Nancy Kress, I'm sure, is in here. Charles DeLint, Nancy Kress is in here. Gregory Frost, Wendy Wheeler, Tanith Lee is in here. Patricia McKillop, Jane Yolen is in here. Jack Dan has a story reprinted in here. Even Terry Guyman, Troll Bridge. These old mass market paperbacks. Who does this distinctive cover design? Are you going to tell me who the cover is? Tom Canty. Used to be that he was the only person doing fantasy and covers at all in American publishers. Was just Tom Canty covers over and over and over again. And I like them. I like his style. I used to get these anthologies, and I'm pretty sure I must have got this one back in the early 90s. I'm not remembering any of the stories in the table of contents, so maybe I got it and didn't read it. But I found it again, so that's the other mass market. Then we have a trade paperback, a classic, something that who is this? Phoenix Press. Did not know that they made this. I read this out of a library in a musty old hardcover. This is G.M. Young, and this is his Portrait of an Age, where he was a strange, self-willed, extremely intelligent man of letters who was commissioned to do something with the Victorians, some anthology or other, that people went to him and said, would you edit this and do all of the integumentary stuff and the essays and whatnot? And he did, but he wrote a long thing at the end about the Victorian age itself. And it was wildly popular. People loved it. And it was reprinted as a book. He enlarged it into a book. Simon Schama. Yeah, Simon Schama's famous quote is, "An immortal classic, the greatest long essay ever written." And there's a young Victoria being crowned. And Schama, of course, is being delirious. But there are lots of other people love this, too. And I loved it when I read it. But I read it out of an old molding hardcover in an old library in Massachusetts, and did not feel at liberty to take a pencil to it and to annotate it. I did not feel at liberty to do that. So now I have a copy of my own. I don't know if it's the greatest long essay ever written, but I do believe it's one of the greatest things ever written about the Victorian era. So I'm happy to have it now in a book form, especially a book form I didn't know existed. Then this book, this next one, I have had a vexed history with it. Let's see, this came out in 2003, and I read it then. So that is what, over 20 years. Okay, well, this is Bernard Henry Levy. This is Who Killed Daniel Pearl. Never thought I would see this book again. I grappled with this book when it came out. This is about the career, the life, and the execution, the on-camera execution of the journalist Daniel Pearl. Back in 2002. I don't know how many of you will remember that story, and I am pretty sure, given how blandly accepting we have all become of censorship, of just, well, no, we're going to just blanket that out of existence so that you can't see it. I wouldn't be surprised if the video that Daniel Pearl's captors, his Islamist fanatic captors, made of his coerced confession of hating the West and then his execution and decapitation. They filmed it, and they sent the video to the West, to various news outlets and whatnot in the West. And I wouldn't be surprised if that whole uncensored video is nowhere online. No idea where you would have to go to see it. I had no idea why you would want to see it. But back then, back in 2002, we didn't. That wasn't the case. Back in 2002, if by some fluke somebody caught a shooting on camera, you could see it. you could go and see the film footage. It would be shown on TV. People falling off the World Trade Centers during the 9/11 attacks. That footage is not shown anymore. It's just this censoring, coddling of the public that, oh, well, no, it's not good. We're deciding that it's not good for you to be able to see this. But I saw that original uncensored video, and it, of course, was horrifying, utterly horrifying. And this author saw it too. And he'd never met Daniel Pearl, and decided to investigate exactly what happened. Examine everything there was to know about Daniel Pearl as a person and a journalist, and also examine everything there is to know about the people who organized his kidnapping and killing. All in a book. Now, the dust jacket here and the publicity material when this thing was first being bruited about stressed the fact that the author is insinuating that maybe this was not a straightforward case of just a political execution for political reasons, for terrorist reasons. That maybe there was more going on than that, connected to more people. I read this when it first came out in a white heat of rage. I really objected to the fact that the book was written at all. I hugely objected to the fact that anyone in France or in America would publish it. It seemed like the act of a body exhumer or a vulture of some kind. And this time has passed, and I now think that maybe part of the reason that I had such heat when I was reading this is because I watched the execution of this young man. Maybe that was just an emotional freight that was unfair to the book. I actually reared back a step when I saw this at the Brattle this morning. And then I realized, yeah, it's time for you to reread this book and see what you make of it. I remember it being tremendously effective. I was just objecting to it the whole time. So we'll see. We'll see what I can make of it. I'm not even going to bother at this late stage of the game. I'm not even going to bother to look to see if I can find that footage. I haven't forgot any minute of it, so I don't think I need to see it again. It would only make me... It'd make me sick, of course. It's sickening to see. But it would also make me mad. Part of it would make me mad that corporations just now treat us like children. So probably I won't go looking for it. But the book is a very odd, very passionate, I think, if I remember correctly, ultimately wrong-footed, but deeply personal way to grapple with this whole story. This whole incomprehensible thing. It seemed utterly incomprehensible when that video was first making the rounds. It seemed utterly incomprehensible that these people in the middle of what looked like a barren desert could just film themselves killing this guy and taunting the West with it, saying there'll be more if you don't do what we want. Obviously, even now I have residual emotions on the subject, so I will be happy to reread the book, very much so. I got all these books in part to stock up because a little rainstorm is supposed to be coming. It was originally 10 days ago. It was predicted to be the mother of all rainstorms. Build an ark now. Start calling the animals 2 by 2. Now I think it's going to be a sprinkle for an hour in the afternoon. But I stocked up on books anyway. This is going to be grim reading, but in many ways it's the thing that interests me the most about this whole haul. Because I don't think I gave it a fair shake when it came out originally. And that bothers me. Okay, then this next one is, believe it or not, an advance copy. And not an American advance copy. Is that right? What are you? Okay, well, it doesn't matter. I hauled this book just recently, in 2025. But I saw this thing and I grabbed it anyway. It'll just be my so-called reading copy, my hiking copy, my camping copy, my bathroom copy, whatever you want to call it. I found an advance copy of Ron Power's biography of Mark Twain. See the reader's advance copy there. Someone put plastic over this to protect it, and it has a clipping on the inside, and it is signed. Someone got it signed and also made sure to mention that it was signed. I'll have to peel that thing off. I don't know that I want to keep this plastic thing on here because unlike the hardcover, this advance copy is embossed. It's really kind of nice. I don't know. Maybe the plastic is a good idea. This has been on my mind. This book has been on my mind. I just recently reread it. because I gave Ron Chernow's forthcoming biography of Mark Twain its first read, my first read of it. And I liked it. I liked it. And Ron Chernow's biography of Mark Twain, of course, is going to get reviewed everywhere. Everywhere in the world is going to review that book. That it sent me back to this book, which I absolutely loved when it first came out. When was that? When did you first come out? 2005. I absolutely loved it. Recommended it to everybody. Thought it was fantastic. And then put it aside. I don't even think I kept a copy. I definitely didn't keep a copy because the hardcover that I got the other day was the one I had. I didn't have any other. And then all of a sudden, 20 years later, a new biography of Mark Twain hoovers onto the horizon. And suddenly I start thinking about this one and remembering, I kept thinking and remembering, boy, the more I think about that, the more I remember that it was really good, that it was really well written, smartly, knowingly, funnily written. It wasn't just a biography. It didn't just sit there on the page. There was art involved in it, a lot of art involved in it. And I was wondering if maybe I misremembered that. I'm a fan of this author. Let's just put it that way. So I wondered if maybe I misread that and was misremembering, was blowing it up in my mind in the intervening years. So when I found a hardcover copy, I read it again with cold dispassion. And it is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It is better than Fred Kaplan's book. It is the best biography of Mark Twain ever written. Not just in terms of its research, not even mainly in terms of its research, in terms of how it's written. And now I don't know what to do. I did that, and I confirmed my initial impressions that this is a genuinely impressive book. Now I don't know what to do. I don't know why I was compelled to do that in advance of reading Ron Chernow's biography a second time and then writing about it. I don't know why I was compelled to do that. Ron Chernow's biography is not as good as this. This is a simple thing. I mean, I don't mean to be unfair to the book. It's not out yet. Ron Chernow is a bit of a juggernaut. He's a bit of a steamroller. I'm not worried that I'm hurting his sales to say that. And his Mark Twain book is very good. Anyway, I've fallen into the habit on this channel of reading the openings of books, but I don't want to read the opening of this book to you. I want to read the ending, which I've read to you before, but I love it. Just love it. This is Mark Twain at the end of his life. On Thursday morning, April 21st, he rallied faintly and tried to read from a volume of Suetonius at his bedside. The Mexican people prepared for revolution against the tyrant Porfirio Diaz. An uprising of Albanians against the imperial Turks sent cracks through the Ottoman Empire. Plans for war and revolution pulsated through the damned human race. A little before noon, he sent Clara to find Paine, and when Paine arrived, Mark Twain indicated a pair of unfinished manuscripts and whispered, "Throw away," and pressed Paine's hand, and that was the last moment Paine had with him. He faded some more, tried to write a note, but his fine handwriting had deserted him. Electricity lighted cities now, but the lamps were going out. He dozed into the early afternoon, awoke, took the hand of Clara beside him, faded some more, managed to say goodbye, and then murmured something that might have been, "If we meet." And then he faded again and kept on fading until there was nothing left of him to hold back the great dark descending on the world, except his words. That is somber, but that kind of brilliance, that kind of, I'm going to shape my prose, not just dump it onto the page, happens all throughout here, in comic registers and in somber registers. Happy to have the advanced copy of this. I don't know about this thing. This seems like it's giving it more trouble than it's worth. I might just take the plastic off it. But now I have a beat-upable copy, I guess you could say. Then this next one, the last Brattle book haul that I did featured a slim work of natural history about the coyote. Oh no, the red fox, which the subtitle insultingly called the cat-like canine. Today I found another slim volume of natural history. I don't know if they're the same library or the same endeavor or whatnot, but it's needless to say, foxes fascinate me. They are my people. They are all my people. But these animals are not my people. I wouldn't have the first idea how to communicate with one of these creatures, but they do fascinate me. I found a book by Nancy Wells Gosling on flying squirrels. A slim little thing that's full of pictures. There's a tiny little flying squirrel. I think some of the pictures are probably in color. Let's see if we can find one that's... You get all sorts of pictures of what these creatures do. No. Is this Audubon? We get an illustration at the beginning, but no color. Oh, I don't have a bookmark. What is this? Look at that. Any of you recognize that place? That's interesting. You never know what you're going to find in old books. All right, so this has tons and tons of pictures of flying squirrels, and I assume it's all about their natural history and their development. And it's fine by me. I don't have a book on flying squirrels. I've met one in person. I used to know someone in the Rocky Mountains who had one as a pet. But I've never read a book on them, so I'm always up for natural history. And then these last two are slightly bigger. They're slightly oversized books. One is only slightly oversized. One is very much oversized. And I don't want to fall back into the habit of buying oversized books. They are white elephants. They're hard to read. Invariably, I end up getting them, sending them back to the Brattle. That's a waste. So I don't really want to do that, but I don't know. I got those two books this year in Brattle Halls. I got those two books on the palaces of Venice and the stately homes of the Veneto. And I have been living in those books, despite how big and heavy they are. I love them. And one of you also sent me that gigantic omnibus of the Triangle Years of Superman. Not oversized, but very heavy. I've been managing anyway. I found, the first one that I found is not all that oversized. It's just a slightly bigger hardcover. And I have had it before. I have a copy that was on the shelf, but it is battered all to hell and gone. It's time that it got replaced. In a normal used bookstore, I would never have a chance of replacing it. At the Brattle, I do, so I just had to be patient. This is Charles Passage's translation of the complete works of Horace. And it is fascinating. Passage has very little patience for the things that most translators do to Horace. So instead, he translates everything that Horace wrote in the original meters, in the original rhythms, with no rhyming, nothing that he's importing from anywhere else, from any other poetic era, just what is there in Horace. So naturally, the translations themselves are a little bit ungainly, a lot of times, but they are different. Of course, they're heavily annotated. This is a life's work that Charles Passage was doing here. Obviously, a life's work of dedication. And also, he summarizes Horace kind of well. What does he say? Besides the value of the poems as poems, there is also the endearing personality of Horace himself to account for their perennial interest. He is every man's friend. Advance only a short distance into his work, and you begin to perceive him as the living personage at your side, immensely likable, trustworthy, level-headed, compatible in almost any society, and congenial with almost any mood. Apart from the rigors of his Latin, he offers few difficulties for comprehension, no inaccessible ecstasies, no dark profundities. Which in someone else's hands might sound like an insult, but Passage loves Horace, and I think this is probably my favorite Horace in English. Of them all, of the uncountable numbers of Horaces in English that there have been. I think this is probably my favorite. And I had a copy of this that was, I went back to it enough times so that pulling it up and on and off the shelf was sort of wearing on it. So I'll retire that copy and put this one up on the shelf instead. Although I can't help but notice when flipping through this book that a change in myself, a sea change that's happening in me, just a little. I don't know if it's temporary or permanent, but I'm starting to lose patience with translations. Read for pleasure on my own time. I'm starting to lose patience with that process, which feels horrifying because I love them and always have. I love English language translations as an art form in their own. So I have so many of them. I have had so many of them and written about so many of them because I view them as an art form on their own. And I guess I can still keep doing that because I will, of course, pay critical attention to new translations. There are new translations coming out all the time. In fact, I think 2025 is going to be a banner year for new translations from all languages, living and dead. New translation of the Aeneid, new translation of the Iliad, new translation of The Man in the Iron Mask, a new translation of a swath of German stuff. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Lots and lots of stuff. So I'm not turning my back on that, of course, because that's part of my remit. But reading on my own, I don't know if it's temporary, but I have noticed in the last year or so that when I am just doing my day's reading and writing, fussing with my baby, all the usual stuff, and I suddenly feel like reading some writer that I can read in the original, I have found in the last year that I don't even think about going to any of the translations that I have. I just go to the original. I don't know what that means. I don't know also how much it's true in this case. Certainly before I found a copy of this book, I'm very happy that I did. It can go on the shelf in the little book room. But before I found a copy of this book, if I'd had a yen to read Horace, I would not have picked up any of the Horace translations into English that I have. I would have gone straight to Horace. And so I don't know. I don't know if that's still true. I will give this a try. I'll read this from front to back since it's been a long time since I found a copy. So I'll read this from front to back and see if maybe that part of me as a reader is changing. I don't know. That would be kind of odd because I love the whole endeavor, the independent artistic endeavor of an English language translation. I think they're fascinating. The choices the translators make. I've made a study of that on my own, regardless of fidelity to the original. I'd hate for that to go away, even on my private time. But you never know. Then I found this last thing is a much bigger book. It is an oversized book. And it's a reprint of an even older book. This book came out at the turn of the 20th century. And it was an epic thing. I think it came out in 2 volumes originally. It was an epic thing. It was advertised everywhere in all kinds of nature groups and literary societies and libraries. And it sold really well, even though it was a large, impressive thing with a hefty price tag. I, of course, found it at the Brattle out in the sale lot for, I think, $3. And it is bigger, but it's full of stuff. I've actually gone through this. I had an old, battered copy of this with no dust jacket. I found a copy of Birds of America. But not that Birds of America, and not that other Birds of America. This is not Audubon, and this is not Mary McCarthy. This is instead a book put out by a whole bunch of nature societies that walks you through all the birds of America with spot illustrations and paragraph descriptions, old photographs, and also illustrations. And also anecdotes. The separate pieces, the separate headings for all of these different kinds of birds, all are filled with anecdotes, with stories from the field and whatnot. I don't know how much of that was inspired. This was originally put together under the auspices of the University Society, yes, but also under the watchful eye of John Burroughs, who's not remembered anymore. But he was not only a great nature writer, but a weird, revered figure of the natural world at the turn of the 20th century. He's forgotten now, but he is wonderful to read, not just on nature. He wrote about everything. He was an odd figure, an odd, bearded prophet from the wilderness type figure. It would be tough for me to describe what the America of 1900 or 1910 thought of him. I don't know that we have an equivalent today. But he was the face of nature for 2 generations of Americans, including one U.S. president who became a friend of his. And his books are on nature. He wrote a whole shelf of books on nature. I once upon a time at the Brattle bookshop, like 10 years ago, saw a beautiful complete set of his out in the sale lot. He doesn't have any resale value. It was a uniform binding set of all of his stuff, and I just ignored it. It was full of black and white photos and everything. I wish I could go back in time and grab that whole set, because he's wonderful to read. He's probably all in Project Gutenberg. But his name is associated with this. Did they put him on the cover? No, they don't put him on the front or the back cover. Come on, though. You've got to trumpet him. Consulting editor John Burroughs. And then a whole bunch of other people. Heavily illustrated. For those of you who care, this has also that intense old used book smell. I think this was really well loved by whoever owned it. And it is bigger. It is slightly ungainly, so it's going to be a little awkward to hold on my lap. But I'm going to do it anyway because I have never owned a copy of this book. Look at that. Oh, my. Look at that. I've met them out in marshes like that. And heard them, certainly. Oh, what have we got here? Another thing found in a book. An old envelope. Look at how old this is. U.S. Bird Records. What is this? Oh, my God. Oh, my. Oh, goodness gracious. You've got to be kidding me. Oh, this is precious. I can't believe this. Some of you who are birders will know this, and if you don't, you maybe know a birder. Birders have things called their list. Every birder has a list. It's a list not only of the things that they've seen and where they've seen them and how many they've seen and maybe a couple of details jotted down, but also a list of things they want to see. Birders' lists are one of the little cynosures of their friendly insanity. And that's what this is. That's what this is. This is somebody's bird list from the 1970s. Look at that. This is from Roosevelt Island. Those are the birds and those are the numbers of birds. Look at that. That's incredible. This one is from Roosevelt Island in 1972. Here it's all handwritten. And there's a little note on the side saying a bitter cold day with high wind. That was from December 19th, 1972. And look at how thorough these are. They just go on and on. This person occasionally went to Delaware and kept a list of everything. Oh, my God. Back to Roosevelt Island, 1972. And the person also saw a raccoon. Oh. Ordinarily, these get buried with birders, but I have somebody's list. I found somebody's list was included with this book. Okay, so they spent... Oh, even the lists have that old book smell. This person spent a lot of time on Roosevelt Island. I also have spent a lot of time on Roosevelt Island. How interesting. On May 15th, 1973, this person saw a black and white rabbit on Roosevelt's Island. They saw warblers on Roosevelt Island. Boy, they just went back over and over again and kept lists of it all. Just list after list after list. That's what this is. This is a birding list. Ordinarily, they keep them in a book, but this is easier to do if you're jotting down things in the field. Oh, how incredible. How incredible. A copy of Birds of America. They probably jotted these things down in the field and then brought them home and just kept them in their Bible, in Birds of America. That's probably what they did. They probably just kept them in this book. Oh, man, that makes this extra special. Oh, that's incredible. All right, well, I'm very glad to have this. I would have been happy anyway, but I have the loving copy that someone else owned. That's even better. So there you go. That is a piece establishing Brattle Hall. I'm trusting that after this book haul, there will be no other book hauls by anyone ever on BookTube. That's what I'm expecting anyway. So we have Birds of America, a nice big hardcover. We have the Charles Passage one-man band complete translation of all of Horace with no gestures to any other kind of poetic tradition. I'm just going to translate literally what's there and all of it, and heavily footnoted, of course. Then a little book on flying squirrels. Happy to read natural history. Ron Powers' biography of Mark Twain. Unfortunately, I think this will not be the last time you hear me talk about this book. Or certainly it won't be the last time you see me write about it, because I'm going to have to mention this book when I write about Ron Chernow's book. I just am. Chernow is a one-man band. He is an institution. I guarantee you there are for-pay newspaper reviewers, book reviewers, who are already preparing to call his biography of Mark Twain the best one ever written, without having read any others, except maybe Fred Kaplan's 40 years ago, and also without having read his yet. I guarantee you there are people who are doing that, and that the blurbs on the paperback will be full of mindless superlatives. So what do? if some big name comes out with a new biography of a big figure and it isn't as good as the previous biography, what do? I'm obviously going to have to figure out that. I guess I'm going to have to do something. Then, who killed Daniel Pearl? I have a long history with this book. I'm going to try to renovate that history. A Portrait of an Age, in its own book. How wonderful. Snow White, Blood Red, some fairy tale retellings. And finally, Treasure of the Brasada, by Les Savage, with a map back of the location of the treasure. I'm going to have to check around to see how much Les Savage I have, because I think I probably want to read a lot of him for June on the Range. So there you go. A nice Brattle haul, in case it rains tomorrow. So I'll wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.